Disclaimer: the following video contains an organized and objectified remix music tier list from the Super Smash Bros. Series. It contains provoking thoughts and concerns from each remix in the games, all coming from this one random guy on the internet. Music is subjective, so not everyone's thoughts and lists might match with myself and others, so please take this into consideration. There will be anger, rage, and a tiny hint of salt, so watch at your own risk. If you do enjoy this video, however, go ahead and give it a like and share it amongst your peers. And why not go ahead and comment on why my tier list is so bad and why my choices were not to your liking. I would love to see what you'd have to say after watching this video. All things considered, I do really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen in on what I have to say in this video. Now, get comfortable and grab some headphones. Let's get right to it and enjoy the sounds of the remixes of the Super Smash Bros. Series. Enjoy. Alright, time for the fourth video of my ongoing series. Honestly, I can't believe I'm still doing this. But for these next batches of remixes, I'm going to be doing a short list of similar remixes like I did with a few orchestrated ones that I feel are not as comparable to their original counterparts. These remixes aren't inherently bad per se, but I would consider them to be downgrades from their previous iterations that they originally came from. I have only 5 of these remixes, all from Ultimate in fact, that don't have the same quality or impact, and I kinda wish that they used the original songs instead of making separate remixes for these. Hope I didn't confuse anyone here, but that's just how I depict things. Hoping it will clear up with the remixes I've listed here, and that will explain everything. Alright, now with that jargon out of the way, the first one of these on the list is called Counter Attack from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. This song is played throughout multiple cutscenes in the game, most notably with Mythra's first ever appearance in the game's main story. The remix for the song uses the same tempo and instrumentation, but is a much calmer piece than its original counterpart, which is preferably why I'm slotting this remix here. As I said before, the remix isn't bad by any means, and it is still a beautiful composition through a live orchestra. But man, I wouldn't lie when I, and probably many others, have heard the original piece from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and say that the original is a superior version. The violins, piano, and electric guitar pieces just hit differently in the original compared to this remix. The remix just feels soft in comparison, while having the same instruments and beats per minute, so I don't know why it was honestly made in the first place. It is all just there to take in and nothing to really show for it. It just feels really empty here. The original song does have a sense of pridefulness and sadness at the same time, and it goes to show in the cutscenes for the game too. This Smash remix doesn't really have that, it's just a background song to fight from start to finish, and it is a bit disappointing if I'm so brutally honest. With that being said, it's still not the worst thing ever, unlike the other previous remixes, so putting this here at the beginning of rank 350 feels like the best spot to put it at. We are actually down to one more Xenoblade remix, believe it or not. Kinda funny that 3 of the 4 remixes I put down are not even past the 100 point mark yet. But just wait to see where I put the last Xenoblade remix at, and the quality speaks for itself. For our second of the disappointing remixes list is Seascape from Splatoon. This song is one of the many multiplayer battle music you can hear throughout the game, mostly through Turf Wars and Rainmaker modes. Originally, the instrumentation had more of a punk rock style to it. The Smash remix for this theme mostly features an electronic synth and drums instead of actual instruments, but keeps the general tone and beats permitted of the original. Now, this right here is a pretty weird remix that was made, especially considering the arranger who actually made this remix. As you can tell from my other previous pieces on the tier list, it's Hirokazu Tanaka, who mostly made Smash remixes from older NES games, so I found it pretty skeptical that he would make a remix from a fairly recent game here. It is an interesting interpretation from a Splatoon remix to say the least. I'm not very caught up with the series, but I can tell that I'm not the only one who wishes that the original Song of Seascape made it into Smash instead of this remix. But I have to give it some credit, it isn't bad by any means, it's just a bit lackluster and I do prefer the punkier rock version more than this one. With what Tanaka did for this remix is acceptable. I feel like he tried to give it more of a taste from what he is usually known for, making older video game music. Dabbling in a rock style to make it his own unique quirks in his sort of composition style is really cool to hear, so I'll give it some points for the attempt at least. And I don't know, I think people might honestly prefer the electronic style of this remix more. Music is subjective, so I prefer the original over this. We can agree to disagree if you like this remix, but I think it is safe for me to put this here on the tier list. So we reached our first SNK remix on the list, and I gotta be honest, putting this remix so low on this tier list really hurts me more than anyone knows. No, seriously, I am in gut-wrenching pain from putting this remix here because the SNK music is so amazing in my opinion. I'll try and pull through and give you the rundown now. By the title's name, this is the second iteration of Stormy Saxophone, first heard from the King of Fighters 96. This plays when the player fights Team Yagami in the arcade mode, or on the stage, the Shipyard, in multiplayer battles. Fun lore fact about this song is that the leader of the team, Yori Yagami, actually plays the saxophone, so the name is very fitting. However, this remix is anything but the saxophone. My god, for a song titled with saxophone in it, I really expected it to be like a really loud and proud saxophone as its main instrument, or maybe like 5 playing at the same time. But this is like the most watered down sax I've ever heard in my life. Getting a little ahead of myself, my bad. I guess you can tell from my little rant in the title too, that the main melody is being played by the saxophone. The instrumentation of the original song to a remix version are pretty much one-to-one, with a rock band playing as a background to the main melody. The remix actually having a bit of a faster tempo, so that is actually a bit of a nice added touch if you're looking for a faster version to listen to. But I actually prefer the slower, more jazzier version of the original 96. I know that it doesn't come out as the best fighting song to listen to, and from an actual fighting game given that fact, but damn, if that vibe ain't smooth as fuck, then I ain't complaining. And also, that sax in the original is way more articulate and punctual than the remix version. Very sad in comparison. After you watch this video, listen to the original, then the remix. It is a super clear difference on what is better. Not only that, but the supporting music in the background is better in the original too than the remix. I definitely wish the original was in the game instead of this. Damn shame too, since Iwadare makes some incredible music. This song is a pretty good fight song in Smash however, so I can't complain that much, but man, I just wish it was better. coming back to another Zelda remix, we have the main theme from The Legend of Zelda, Triforce Heroes. As the title suggests, this is the title theme for the fairly recent game at the time for the 3DS, Triforce Heroes. Just like with its original track, this remix features more or less the same type of instrumentation like the accordion, acoustic guitar, bongos, a synth, and a tin whistle that plays the melody of the song most of the time. The remix also adds in a drum set to add in a more jumpy feel compared to the original song, which I don't mind one bit. However, this remix features a much slower tempo and uses the tin whistle as the melody, unlike the viola and violin from the original version that I believe does a much better job than this ultimate remix, which brings to why I'm putting this remix on this spot. I don't really mind this remix per se. It's a nice composition, but comparing the original main theme from the remix is like a night and day difference to me. I would much rather listen to the original in my honest to God opinion. The violins are a much better instrument to use than the whistle for its main melody, and it is much faster and more dramatic. Shame really, cause the melody is actually really nice to listen to, but it also isn't that much better in a fight to begin with. It kinda sounds like Irish bar music. Which, I don't know how that sounds like. It could be good Irish bar music. Don't quote me on that though. The remix is pretty great on its own for a decent fight song, I'll give it that, but comparing it to the original is just another story of itself. Sorry Minami Kyoto, this remix just didn't hit well with me, but we will see her later on the list with more of her prominent remixes. Oh boy, I am definitely gonna go to hell for this one, folks. Please dismiss that I actually hate this remix. I really do like it for what it's worth, but I'll let you know why I won't give it much praise from the original soon enough. Moonsiders First is a track that is featured in Tekken 7's Infinite Azure stage. The original track of the song is an electronic-inspired song that the Tekken game franchise is notably known for. This remix that Yoko Shimomura provides here is a quaint-sounding remix that mostly emphasizes the main melody of the original song, with the piano mostly providing it as Yoko's main instrument of choice. Bongos, acoustic guitars, electronic drums, and a synth are there for supporting background instruments for this remix. It is a very lovely piece, as all Shimomura works are in every composition she has ever been a part of. But while talking about the Tekken series in general, this style of music would not be considered one of the best. My lack of electronic or techno knowledge really is going to show here, but listening to the remix and the original Moonsiders First is practically another night and day difference, and I would have rather listened to the original song than this remix here in Smash. The original just has more of a blood-pumping feel that Tekken is more known for with that amazing electronic drum beat. Leaving that out makes the remix feel dull by comparison. Really pains me to have this remix so low for the list, but looking at it objectively, I have to put it here with the other remixes that can't be above par from the original source material. I would honestly have this remix higher, which I actually did in my original rough draft of the tier list, but I have to take this remix and compare it to the original song, like I have been doing on my ranking for the other remixes here, and it really just wasn't meant to be in my honest opinion. And with that, concludes my part of the list where the remixes aren't as impactful to the original. From here on out, all of the remixes listed I do believe stack up and are exceedingly better than its original counterparts, but some of these next few remixes still can't quite match up with the higher end of the list. I guess I'll just have to show you what's up next. So if you think that last pick was crazy, I must be more crazier having one of Motoi Sakuraba's remixes so low on the tier list. Well, I already know that I'm crazy, but I know that this remix being low isn't that crazy at all. Versus Parasite Queen is a song that takes place in the Frigate Orphean area of the GameCube game Metroid Prime, where Samus fights the Parasite Queen. Original instrumentation for this song mostly used a synth to convey its sinister tone and dark atmosphere that the Metroid series is known for. And the remix does that as well, but with a slight tempo increase that heavily focuses on heavy metal attributes, such as a bass guitar, electric guitars, and drum set while keeping the synthesizer melody in play throughout the whole track. The remix also includes a choir in its key riffs, which is a really nice touch. Having a choir in any type of music is always nice to have and help convey the tone of the music being played here. So saying all those positives about the remix should have made it clear to make it really high up on the tier list, right? Well, I haven't fully explained myself. Listening to this remix a bit throughout Ultimate's lifespan made me like it less and less, just to put it lightly. I do like the heaviness that Sakuraba gave it, but the atmosphere is what I really like more from the original, just a dark and gritty tone. There are a few of these Smash Ultimate remixes which give them more life and the thrill of a fight, which I'm all for, but some remixes just don't hit that mark quite as well. Versus Parasite Queen is just one of those types of remixes. I feel like it's just trying way too hard to be very thrilling and loud. It just kinda shoots itself in the foot. Also, I haven't mentioned yet, this remix has a tendency to be annoying with the snare drum hits. Maybe it would have been higher if I didn't have that annoying drum that you hear on every beat it makes. I probably would have still put it near the early 300s, but regardless, it's just a small complaint of mine that I make it seem to be bigger than it should be, but what can you do? Alright, well, funny enough, this is a Motoi Sakuraba back-to-back remix. Not a coincidence at all, these two remixes just have a super bad case of loud snare drum syndrome and try a bit too hard for my liking. Anyways, this is the ultimate remix of Foresight from Earthbound. Just like in the Melee remix before it, the original song takes place in the area known as Foresight, also known as Held in the Skyscraper. The original song mostly consists of a MIDI synth that it does with all of the game's soundtrack, but the Ultimate remix flips it over its head with a more progressive rock style to it, such as a bass guitar, electric guitar, and drum set, while keeping the melody led by a synth with brass horns added into the mix, making it a bit more flashier of a song to fight in. This remix isn't quite bad at all, minus the whole drum set being a bit too obnoxious, like with Versus Parasite Queen before it, but just like with the shift in tone, I feel like this remix of Foresight kinda lost its way on becoming a great remix, because it once again tried a bit too hard trying to be a bit flashy. During my early drafts on the tier list, I actually put the Melee remix of Foresight before the Ultimate remix, but I decided not to due to my criteria hindering its placement. This Ultimate remix makes it a pretty cool fight song to listen to in Smash. I just feel like it doesn't convey the same message as it does with the Melee remix, which I actually do like it more, believe it or not. It might be my bias is showing, but that's just how I feel. I'm pretty sure some people watching this video might be feeling the same way about this placement, but I can also see some putting this remix in their top 100. But I'll be placing it at 344 due to wacky drums going bang all the time. Super unfortunate. speaking of ultimate remixes that have that dreaded annoying snare drum syndrome, we have Noisy Notebook. This remix is found on the first level of the 2017 game Snipperclips on the Nintendo Switch. It combines two of the themes found in the level, the A version which is found on the first section of the remix, and the C version on the second section. This remix is a bit more upbeat and has a faster beat per minute than the original songs, with more instrumentation such as electric guitars, an accordion, and heavier percussion. Unfortunately, that heavier percussion will bring me to why I'm not a huge fan of this remix. Just like with the previous remixes, all I hear is this loud-ass snare drum and I can't really hear much of everything else. It's so apparent here that it makes me a bit sad that I hear this about 60% of the time, while the other instruments make it a somewhat outstanding piece that I would have loved to hear without that stupid snare drum. See, I was a percussionist back in high school, and it is more of a supporting type of instrument found in the background of music, supporting the melodies with a sick beat to make the music pieces livelier. When I can't hear the melodies all that well, then the rest of the music gets lost to me and then I deem it a pretty mediocre piece. But whenever I don't hear that god-awful drum somehow, I think this remix actually isn't that bad at all. If it wasn't for the drums, I would most likely rank this remix at around the 250 to 300 mark. Not a bad remix melody-wise, with some unique instrumentation from a niche Nintendo one-off title. But playing this in a fighting perspective in Smash, I always listen to the drum and it is annoying as fuck. If I can somehow tune the remix so that the drums aren't as present, then I wouldn't mind this at all. But that is unfortunately not the case here. Down on the list it goes. Back into the Zelda remix fray, we got Death Mountain on deck. And I just noticed that I've only covered 8 ultimate remixes up to this point in today's video. Just found it pretty funny that I wanted to share. But back on topic. This original track of the remix is actually from the very first Zelda game on the NES, The Legend of Zelda. It takes place in the final dungeon for the game, called Death Mountain. Instead of the chiptune style of the original game, the remix features a prominent orchestra-style piece with choir added in to make it more dramatic for the other Ultimate remixes. The remix features not just Death Mountain, but the jingle when Ganon appears, the game over theme, the ending theme, the puzzle solve theme, and a remix of the really overused overworld theme. Near the end, then switches back to Death Mountain. Now with all the information out of the way, just gonna come out and say that I'm not the biggest fan of this remix. I mean, it's great that it's very fast and it can be perfect for a final battle type of music, but once again I feel like it just tries way too hard to be a great Ultimate remix. The bias might definitely show here once again, but this remix just isn't it, chief. There are some parts where I kinda like, obviously the choir is one of them, and the percussion setting here is pretty neat as well. I honestly never really picked up on how great the percussion is on this track when the strings and the choir kind of drown out that sound. But I just think that it's a bit weird that I really don't notice this remix at all when playing a game of Smash with how loud and bombastic it really is. It just kind of blends into the background of the fight and it's just there with no noteworthy parts to really make it outstanding. I can't really understand what Akihiro Honda was going for when making this remix. Maybe another universe me would really like this remix and put it pretty high on this tier list, but I'm not too sure what else to say though. Might as well move on to the next remix then if I can't really have anything else to say other than this. But what I can say is that I finally hit that 100th remix milestone. Now only 341 remixes left to go till I finish this passion project that I put on for myself. God, please help me get the strength to keep on going. might as well go ahead and come out with another Zelda remix while I'm at it. Here we have the Hyrule Field theme from the Nintendo 64 masterpiece Ocarina of Time. This plays when Link is traversing the open fields of Hyrule during the day. You know, I just noticed that a lot of the Brawl music that they remixed really came out with a lot of overworld areas of games. Unlike the original though, which is being played by a MIDI, this remix is played by a live orchestra instead in all of its glory. This is going to be a pretty brief explanation, but the remix pretty much does the same thing that the original already has done with the same type of melody and tempo pace, which means it's basically a one-to-one recreation just with better quality. Honestly, I probably should have put this remix much lower on the tier list if I'm being super objective, like near the 400th rank since it has like no originality to it. But this remix is a classic. I do adore the simplicity behind its music, and I don't know, it really gives me a fighting vibe to it for some odd reason. If not that, then a pretty adventurous one, and it did a good job at doing that. Yeah, my bias in music taste is pretty much all over the place. Y'all just have to deal with it. Regardless, it is a simple recreation with hardly any differences in its presentation compared to the original track, so I'll slide this remix here on the tier list. Gotta pay respects to the classics sometimes. On a side note, the arranger for this remix, Yutaka Ihara, is her one and only remix in the entire Smash series, sadly. Considering that she is still composing music to this day, it's kinda sad to see she didn't get any more Smash appearances after this, but that's just life, I guess. Back to another Metroid remix, we have Sector 1. This theme comes from the 2002 Game Boy Advance game Metroid Fusion, and plays while Samus is traversing through Sector 1, a beginning area of the game. The remix sounds just like the original track with the same tempo more or less, just with updated musical quality through an orchestra, instead of a compressed piece through the Game Boy Advance. This remix was arranged by the original composer for Metroid Fusion, and the Metroid series in general, Minako Hamano. So, off of a first listen, people would probably remember this music piece when going through Brawl's Subspace Emissary mode, when Zero Suit Samus and Pikachu fight the cloned Power Suit Samuses. And after that, I bet people would mostly forget that this remix ever existed. Just for that one instance. And I agree to some extent of that. I'd say this is honestly a pretty forgettable remix. Kinda surprised I put it so high up given that it is almost a direct one-to-one comparison from the original Game Boy Advance track, minus the music being upscaled through actual instruments. But I actually quite like it. It's not a great fighting game track, but I do like its atmosphere that it portrays, especially the dark nature that the Metroid series usually offers, and its stage picks make it foreboding to say the least. Also, the electronic drums steal the show for me. It's not too encompassing like those Ultimate remixes before it, and it covers a unique sense of urgency that can keep me on my toes. I do like that feeling if done correctly. Honestly, another bias rank pick for me, but I feel like it's just right to be slotted here on the tier list. On a weird side note, does anyone think that this remix has a certain Metal Gear Solid vibe to it? Anyone? Just me? Should've kept that comment to myself. Here we have another interesting take on Nintendo history, and music, I guess? It's the PictoChat remix. This remix consists mostly of Nintendo DS and Wii menu sounds, such as the DS and Wii startup jingles, but most importantly, the PictoChat sound effects it makes while typing on the keyboard, which plays throughout the piece. At the start of the remix, an entirely original jazzy tune featuring a piano, cello, and drums can be heard with a PictoChat-type melody gets played for the first 15 seconds of the song, then results to the game menu sounds throughout the remix with a synth and electronic drums while playing in the background. I really do enjoy experimental songs like these that showcase a bit of Nintendo history, kinda like the two Flat Zone remixes before this one. Thank God that this remix isn't as annoying as those, but the typing sounds could portray a similar type of annoyance for some, I would suspect. Also, back when I was a kid, I remember this being my favorite remix, and listened to this quite often when playing Brawl since it was a fairly new game at the time. Yeah, I was a weird kid. But aren't we all? I still do enjoy this remix actually, but I grew up, and now putting this remix up in this rank. It's not really a good fight song, and I do think it could be annoying for some from what I said earlier. The typing sounds here can take a toll on oneself for longer sessions of time, given if you played a full match of Smash with this playing in the background. However, I still do have fond memories of this remix. I won't forget it being how bad my taste in video game music has come to be. I jest, but somehow I don't think that's entirely wrong at all. Oh yeah, coming back to everyone hating my picks phase. This remix is the Fortress boss from the NES classic Super Mario Bros. 3, where Mario or Luigi will have to defeat the boss of the fortress and airship levels, which is usually Boom Boom and the Koopalings respectively. The remix also features the Ice World and Dark World map themes near the end before looping back to the beginning. Instrumentation-wise, there is a lot going on here. This is a live orchestra song with chiptune elements from sound effects that were taken from the game, which is a good segue on why I absolutely cannot stand this remix sometimes. The oversaturation of in-game sound effects are just baffling. Sound effects including spawning an item from a question mark block, collecting said item, using the raccoon tail power-up, and Mario using a pipe is used throughout the entirety of the remix. It really cannot go 5 whole seconds without doing these sound quips, and it really pisses me off. I could go with using these sound effects every so often, like at the start of the first and second sections of the Fortress boss remixes, and maybe at the end of the remix to loop, but this is just way too much. Which is a super big shame. The music in this track is phenomenal, especially that violin solo with the second section is beautifully played here, and I enjoyed the Ice and Dark World sections as well. If it wasn't for the absurd amount of chiptune sound effects in this remix, this would have easily been in the top 50 favorite Smash remixes. But I cannot look past these annoying ass sounds. It's very similar to the annoying snare drum pieces that I had a few ranks back. It's just overbearing and not that enjoyable to listen throughout. If anyone can find a way to mod music or create another version of the remix without the sound effects, please link it up in the comments so that I can actually listen to the music playing in the background, instead of me being pissed every time I have to listen to this dreadful piece. I see people all the time really praising this remix, but I just can't see it. The only reason I have it up here is the fast-paced nature of this remix, and I guess it can be pretty hype for intense matches, but that's all I'm really going to give it. Here we have another upbeat orchestra remix ready for battle, called Save the World Heroes. This remix comes from the 3DS Street Pass game Find Me 2, and it plays in battles throughout the adventure. The remix also has a higher tempo from its original, but with upscaled instrumentation through a live orchestra. Although, while listening to this remix, I can't help but feel that this is somehow midified. Kinda like how a few other remixes were like. For instance, that new Super Mario Bros. Remix I had from the last video. Kinda feels like that the instrumentation feels compressed in a way. That's the main reason why this is so down on the list, just like the rest. This remix was originally made for the 3DS version of Smash 4, so the downscaling musical score might make a lot of sense. But this is honestly still a pretty great orchestrator track to begin with, and it can be fun to listen to at times. Kinda wish that there were more points of detail with the brass, like they have done with the Find Me medley that was made in Ultimate. We'll go over that at a later date, but this remix feels dull compared to that remix, and I would honestly rather listen to other remixes than this one. But at the time, this remix felt at home on a 3DS, so I can respect it on some fronts. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll be moving on now. Coming around with another Metroid remix. We had quite a few to go over this section of the tier list this time around, but don't fret Metroid fans, this is the last one we'll see for a while. This is the title theme for the original NES game Metroid, which plays in the intro of the game. This remix actually includes the Super NES Super Metroid and the Game Boy Advance Zero Mission title themes as well, so you can say that this is like a title medley for the Metroid series of some kind, and starts off with the opening jingle for when Samus starts a game. The remix instruments used for this piece is a mix between an orchestra with electronic synth elements to combine what we see, or rather hear, here. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this remix. I heard this back when the Club Nintendo Smash 4 CD came out. I listened to this and thought it was alright, then I listened to it some more and I was like, yeah, not a fan, and it never really swayed me since. It's an alright piece of music, but it doesn't really convey the gloomy and horror-esque atmosphere that the original song brought to the player on the NES. Yeah, you heard me. The 8-bit version of the song did a tremendous job better with its atmosphere than this remix ever did. I'm not too sure what kind of feelings this piece was going for, like, is it supposed to be having a very proud feeling with Samus's theme? Or is it supposed to be foreboding and have a sense of dread? I can't really tell and it just feels off for me. Oh, also another thing, this is actually Kota Takahashi's only remix he ever arranged for the Smash series, just like with the Hyrule Field theme I mentioned for Ihara. Yeesh, I'm sounding like a huge bully here. Well, how about some positives at least? I do really like this chime instrument that is mostly used for its main melody, while the string instruments, electric guitar, and electronic synth are mostly used as background, which makes it a unique remix. Just the way that this remix was handled, I don't personally love that much. I'm pretty sure other people very much like this remix, but I can't seem to grasp its context and drive, so I'll be putting it here on the tier list. Here's a remix where I can honestly say that I put way too high on the tier list, but I can't help but like it all the same. Flower Field is from the DS game Yoshi's Touch and Go, and plays during the marathon mode where you try to reach the farthest distance until you get a game over. This remix was arranged by the original composer, Asuka Hayazaki, and while the remix has the same melody of the original, it has a faster tempo and has a more energetic and upbeat vibe compared to the original too, which I quite like a lot. Instrumentation-wise, it sounds like it does in the original, however, with saxophones, xylophone, and woodwind instruments comprising the main melody, with a brass, tambourine, and random wacky instruments all around. Honestly, whenever I hear this track, I can't help but smile and feel a bit happy while finding it in Smash. It's a bit weird that I really had this track low on my drafts and then it kinda grew on me somehow. Though, I can tell that this isn't the objective best remix for Smash. It is very slow in its second section with hardly any instruments being played here, and it doesn't have that itch to play in a Smash game. I can also feel that it can be annoying to some. The random wacky instruments from the remix can take away the nice enjoyable act to something rather cumbersome and old really quick. It's also a pretty short remix as well, but short and sweet tracks can be a good thing sometimes. Well, sometimes. Looking at you, Bombman Stage. Anyways, a surprisingly nice track is always welcome in my book, so I'll slot it at rank 335 on my tier list. Any objections to this to have it lower than it is, and I'll see y'all in hell. Next up is another remix that I can get behind at times, and is a bit fun in my honest opinion. It is the Underground theme that comes from the original Super Mario Bros. For the underground levels of the game. Instead of the classic 8-bit music, this remix uses a more stylized techno style mainly using synths and Rhodes with some 8-bit sound effects mixed in. Gotta say, I really dig the vibe that this remix has to offer. It definitely took the theme more underground than it ever did. Adding a new pseudo-theme nearing the end of the remix makes it really cool with the synth and added harp. Also, the water droplet effects are a nice touch, adding a bit of a chilling atmosphere in there too. This remix is pretty neat, but I'll have to put it on here just because it's not a very fight-centric song. I know, I'm basically killing all the fun here. That, and also the underground portion for the Smash stage Mushroom Kingdom, got removed for Ultimate, so it feels a lot more out of place now with it removed when this remix was meant to be played in that section of Mushroom Kingdom, only back in Brawl. It would have really been super cool to see this stage return to form, but that never came to be in future Smash games. That's just how the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. Game development sucks sometimes. At least this remix is still in Ultimate. However, a super cool remix by itself, but without the right context stage-wise and how it isn't a very good fighting game song, I'm forced to put it pretty low on my tier list. If it was like a bit faster and harder with more boom to it, I think I really could have definitely put this remix a bit higher. Oh god, I can already tell a lot of people are going to be ill by this placement. I wouldn't blame you all for hating me for this pick, but I'll tell you why I gave this beautiful piece this abhorrent rank, and also the fact that this is the first Final Fantasy VII song on the tier list. This theme is Cosmo Canyon, and it plays when the party is traversing from the area of the same name. Unlike the original song which plays from a MIDI back in the original PlayStation, this song is conducted by a live orchestra, and it has a very Native American charm to it just like in the original. The tempo is also a bit faster than the original, and this remix can be played through the recent Theta Rhythm Final Fantasy Barline game, since this song is owned by Square Enix as a collab arrangement. So just like I said before, this is a very beautiful piece of music. Literally, all of Yoko Shimomura's musical creations turn into lucrative gold every time she makes a composition. It is insane how talented she is. The live orchestra does wonders for this remix. I wouldn't really listen to the original version as well if it got ported over to Ultimate just by itself, like it did with a few of its tracks, like Genova for example, which is a great song originally by the way, please don't hate me. I just can't bring myself to like it in a fighting game. It's too soft and it's really slow even with the faster tempo that this remix has put on. I think it's kinda weird that Yoko is given this sort of pass when it comes to making music for Ultimate. All of the other composition arrangers were meant to make it so that their remixes are made for fighting music in mind, while Yoko is just kinda there making the most amazing pieces known to man, but without the fighting context if you catch my drift. Granted, she has made really good fight songs throughout her video game musical history, but I just don't understand why it wouldn't want to be done in Ultimate. Guess I'll never know. I think everyone can blatantly see why I'm disappointed with this piece, so let's move on. Okay, if Cosmo Canyon wasn't the one remix that people want me to jump off a bridge for, then Destroyed Skyworld would be the final nail to this coffin I made myself. Slight spoiler warning when going in depth for this remix, this can be heard at chapter 20 for the 3DS game Kid Icarus Uprising, where Pit traverses the destroyed Skyworld in search of the Chaos Kin that is controlling Palutena. The original song was played by a live orchestra, just like the remix, but the main melody of the remix is being played by brass horns and female opera singers in a mix of Japanese and Latin? I can never really tell what language origin this is, and I can't find any lyrics or explanation from the internet of what they're actually trying to say, so apologies for not putting any lyrics up on the screen for you to follow along. Funny enough, the remix also goes out of order from the original song back on the 3DS. The second section of the original song is now played as the first section for this remix, and vice versa when the first section being played on the second section. If you're confused, listen to the original song on YouTube or something. This remix, however, is fairly nice. It is like the only good Kid Icarus Uprising song that is able to actually put down as a good fighting game song, and the background music helps convey the dread and emptiness. But there is this one teeny tiny problem that I just can't get over. If I may be so bold. Can I be so bold? I just really do not like the opera singers here. I cannot get over them and I feel like they're butchering the remix a lot. I basically got over 90% of viewers to click off this video, huh? Well, if you manage to stick around, they do generate a good atmosphere, but I think they sound cumbersome and all around not that good at all. In my own words, they are like nails on a chalkboard. I remember listening to this one back in the day on the Smash 4 CD, and this shit almost made me pass out while driving around in my car. I may be exaggerating a bit, but I really don't think the singers really mix well in this remix. I really do like opera singers and choirs in video game music, and there are a couple of remixes in the Smash series that have outstanding performances by them, but I just think that this remix is least contempt out of all of them, sadly. This is one of the very few remixes that I have a huge bias over, and this might hit home for a lot of people that generally like it. I understand that some people would like to put this remix in their general top 100, and I can respect it and see the value in that, but damn, I just cannot give a fuck about this one. believe it or not, we've come across our first Pikmin remix on this tier list finally. I'm actually kind of surprised I put it so high up because I'm not the biggest fan of the Pikmin series and its music to begin with. But these remixes are actually not that bad, but here's the first one which I think is the worst in that spectrum. This remix is the mission mode theme for the Wii U game Pikmin 3. This plays when the player plays through the various levels for missions in said game. Unlike in the original, which is basically a marching theme, the remix is more of an upbeat version of said march with added acoustic guitars, keyboards, and percussion instruments like in xylophone, chimes, and triangle. And don't forget all of those cute little Pikmin noises scattered throughout. And while the noises add a unique charm to the remix and its representation of the series as a whole, I'm not completely sold on it. So yeah, I find the noises a bit annoying, but at least it's not hard snare drum or whistle annoying like many of the remixes we went over already. Plus, the music isn't that bad. The various percussion instruments as well as the guitars add that flair to really spice up the music, and in a gameplay setting for Smash too. I would honestly have this remix a bit higher than I should have given, but you can't turn off those Pikmin noises and it brings it down a notch for me. Maybe if I was a Pikmin fan, I could see the joy in this remix, like I presume many of the other fans of the series do. Definitely another biased pick, and I'm slotting it here on the tier list. I can only handle so many weird noises and uppity music all at once. I hope someone at least agrees with me on that front. Oh man, more Zelda overworld themes to go over. My favorite. This theme, just like many others, is the overworld theme from the original NES game, The Legend of Zelda, and it covers the theme where Link traverses the main world from the game. As I said many times before. This is played over a live orchestra, and as you can hear, has that definite live orchestra feeling that we all know and love. In all honesty, there isn't much to talk about, as I have mentioned before with other previous overworld themes. It has the same melody, mostly the same instrumentation and tempo. However, this remix has a more vibrant feeling of being on a grand adventure, which I do like a bit more than the others I previously mentioned. If this is the one remix of the overworld theme that I would want to listen to for Zelda in Smash, it would be this one. In fact, this is the highest overworld theme on the list, so we won't dive into this one theme any longer. A blessing in disguise. The Zelda music for Smash in general is so generic that I wish that they had more remixes for other songs in the series to go over. Ultimate kinda scratched that itch with its remixes, but I would have really liked to listen to more variety Zelda themes from the earlier entries in the Smash games beforehand. We still have quite a few more Zelda remixes to go over later, and some are near the top of the list, just an FYI. I don't hate Zelda music, just this oversaturated theme. But since I haven't talked about this remix yet, it's nice and quaint and has that grand adventure feeling that I mentioned. Some down parts with only just the woodwinds, strings, and brass instruments, which is alright I guess, but that ending really takes the cake. I absolutely love how bombastic it all feels when it comes to that ending with everything coming together. Reminds me of that Twilight Princess opening. You know the one. And that's all the positive notes that I'll give out. I think it's time to move on now. Been a hot minute since I covered a Pokemon remix. Most of them are all pretty much bangers, minus a few. But I'd say that this remix is decent enough. Not the best, but a pretty substantial one. This original theme comes from the Game Boy games that started it all, Pokemon Red and Blue. and plays when the player traverses through Route 1 and 2 in the game, with the ending of the remix getting played when the player hits Viridian City, making it a double-themed track and a clever title to boot since you're basically walking up on the road to Viridian City. I see what they did there. The remix instruments comprises a live orchestra playing a march on its first half, with a main focus on woodwind and brass instruments playing the melody. Then on the second part it comes to a rock-led track from an electric guitar, with a faster tempo from the first section. And finally ending off that Viridian City remix, with a calming tone from a slower speed, with acoustic guitars taking the stage, before going back to that orchestrated march with the loop and ending the song. I actually really dig this style of remix, although it takes similar approaches from what I mentioned before with the underwater theme from Super Mario Bros. Or You Call This a Utopia from the Mother series, and it takes a whole lot of different styles of music in the same remix. Not really a huge fan of all these different types of styles and tempo changes, but I'm all for it if done correctly, which this remix does way better than those others that I mentioned. My favorite part of the remix, of course, is the rock-led section in the middle part of the song. The march orchestra from the first section is pretty great too, and plays a great homage to the original Pokemon games. But that third section of the remix with Viridian City puts me to sleep, and I'm not the biggest fan of. Way too slow from those other amazing sections for the first two parts. Really hits me hard when remixes kinda do this, and I'm docking some points from an overall pretty great remix. I just shouldn't put it this low with how many great points that I'm giving it, but I can't bring myself to like these slow parts when those amazing fast-paced parts happen first. Perhaps if the slow parts came in first to make it faster at the end, I probably would have liked it a bit more. Perhaps I should move on so that I don't get flamed in the comments more than I already have. Gotcha guys, another remix for the Zelda franchise so soon. This is the main theme for the recent Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild game that came out for the Nintendo Wii U and Switch. This song doesn't really play during the game's adventure in full, but plays during the opening section of the game that you can see on screen now, but also can be heard in promotional trailers for the game and throughout the adventure in small chunks. The remix, much like the original, plays in an orchestral setting with a big component of its opera, brass, string, and percussion instruments, unlike with the flute found in the original. The remix also has a faster tempo and goes into a more smoother transition from its cut from the original piece. There weren't too many musical pieces for Breath of the Wild to begin with, so why not make a remix for this in Smash? This isn't a bad live orchestra rendition of the theme, but in all honesty, this theme doesn't really have a big impact as much as I would like. There's only so much a live orchestra can do for a game like Smash in my opinion. Can't really say anything more than that, like, they made it a bit faster and put in a bit more stuff into it, and it definitely still drives home that feeling of Zelda that we can agree on. I really can't put my finger on it that it just needs something, you know, more. Could be in the wrong here and I should just appreciate the piece a bit more than I should, and stop being such a panty waste. But since this is my list, y'all just have to deal with it. Slotting this into rank 328 and moving on. Man, another Kid Icarus remix. Can't really give this series a break, huh? Worst of all is that this will be the last remix that was featured in Smash 4 and the game Kid Icarus Uprising. A 2 for 2 kind of ender, and I haven't even touched the Brawl remixes for the original Kid Icarus game yet. Might be a nostalgia thing, but I do think those remixes are a bit better than the ones that were made in Smash 4. Anyways, here we have the best Smash 4 remix for Kid Icarus Uprising, which I think is probably a hot take at this point. It's the Lightning Chariot bass. This theme plays when Pit is traversing the level on the ground in Chapter 19 for the game, which is aptly called the Lightning Chariot bass. This remix was also rearranged by Masafumi Takada, who also was one of the original composers for the game too. And listening to the original from the remix, not much has changed. Same type of live orchestra instrumentation with higher quality from 3DS game to Wii U remix, just with a faster tempo. So you're probably asking yourself, how did I manage to get this remix all the way up here if they didn't change much and passed Destroyed Skyworld no less? What about that criteria? I have 4 words to say about this. That damn electric guitar. Near the end of the remix, they added an electric guitar, and good god, that thing just goes off without warning. Man, it just pumps me up every time I hear it. So yeah, that's why it's so high up. I kid mostly, but I do like the melody as well. It's pretty quaint and soothing, but a bit menacing at the same time. I also do have fond memories playing this game back then. Fun game. Please play Uprising. So yeah, a pretty biased pick for me, but what can I say? This is my tier list after all. Alright, last remix for this video, and coming to an interesting Japanese influence piece as well. I just want to say first off for this remix is that this was actually going to be the first SNK remix that was going to be featured on my tier list. If it wasn't for Stormy Saxophone 2 being the way that it was, unfortunately. So anyways, this remix comes from the Neo Geo game Art of Fighting, which stars Ryo Sakazaki as its main character, clamoring many fights to rescue his kidnapped sister, Yuri Sakazaki. This theme originally played against Ryo Hakutoto, Ryo's sensei in the game, but this theme is widely considered to be Ryo's main theme for his character. Unlike in the original song, this remix is updated with a faster tempo and played with traditional Japanese instruments like the not again. The shakuhachi and the shamisen. Just like with the other remixes mentioned on my list earlier that were performed by Hide and Hide. And once again, I'm not a huge fan of the feudal Japan music for Smash, even if the composer's style of music is mastered and accustomed to, and this one is no different. While the style of music fits Ryo as his character, as well as the Art of Fighting game in general, I just don't really see it crossing over for as good context within Smash. Honestly, the reason why it's not as far down like with the other feudal Japan remixes is that there is a bass guitar here, and man, this bass player just kicks so much ass. I love me a good bass, and it really spices up the background music to give it that extra tang. And just like with many of my other spots on the tier list that I'm sure a lot of people would put me in the wrong and say that I have bad taste in putting these sorts of remixes pretty low on my own tier list, but honestly, I could care less. There are far better SNK remixes in this game that I would much rather listen to than this one. Please believe me, it isn't bad by any means, but I could go with ones that suit my style of music instead. And yeah, that's that. Roll the outro, future me. Howdy everyone, the 4th video is now done and dusted. Hope you all liked it today. As you can tell, we are finally out of the really horrible remixes and moving on to the ones that are more prominent and competent now that people will actually enjoy them from listening off and on in a Smash game. Well, to me at least, but I assume people will feel the same way. I hope. We are only going up from here, but we're still far from the best of the best. Just hold out a little bit longer for the actual amazing pieces to go over. Unless if I stated your favorite remix already and butchered its placement really terribly. Well, don't know what to say about that, but oh well, I guess. Not my problem that it isn't my favorite. Anywho, if anyone likes to watch these videos instead of listening in, I hope the gameplay is up to par for your viewing pleasure. At the end of the day, it is all supplementary and not a big focus for this project. I wouldn't mind if anyone listened to these types of videos instead, while working, sleeping, or doing any type of activity while this plays in the background. But if anyone didn't listen in on my first outro video, which, honestly, I wouldn't blame you, it was about 12 minutes in length. That was an absurdly long outro. But I pointed out about the gameplay for these videos in one section, and I'd just like to reiterate it here. I gathered about a wide variety of Smash Ultimate footage throughout the span of 6 months or so, through online and offline means. Each match was played with 5 stocks in 8 minutes, which is not the competitive standard when it comes to Ultimate. It's usually 3 stock in 7 minutes. Reason being is that sometimes those matches are much shorter, sometimes usually lasting only a minute if one of the players are playing really hot, so it would have been more beneficial to me if I did longer matches so that it can get a decent runtime for my explanations for each remix in the game. I also participated in all of these matches you are watching with the defaulted skin character that is associated with the music and playing in the background. So if you want to shit talk someone who is playing really bad, you can definitely blame me for not providing the most pleasurable gameplay experience in the world. What I don't want you all to do is talk badly about the players who I am facing against in these videos. Some of these players are on a different skill level and not as prominent in the game as many others, and they just want to have fun in their own gameplay styles. So if I happen to see any disrespectful comments, they will most likely be deleted. Or whatever YouTube's comments options are. I honestly have no idea how any of this works yet. If you happen to be one of those players that I mentioned and see yourself in the background of these videos, I sincerely thank you very much for helping me grab all of this amazing footage for this project. It means a great deal to me to get all of this done. Also, about 90% of this footage is all taken from online arenas, so you're bound to watch some slow gameplay speed, self-destructs, and the occasional weird options from either player in these gameplay sections due to the horrendous input delay that the game has, which is a huge bummer. So please keep that in mind. Alright, well, I think I said quite enough for today's outro. I don't want to ramble on for another 12 minutes of your time. But I do appreciate anyone who has stuck around for watching these videos of mine and hope that you will continue to listen and enjoy them. That being said, I hope everyone has a blessed day and see you next time. Bye-bye.